What do you think that you are able to do through this summer in terms of additions, and what do you want to add?
I mean, I've spoken about it. We hold a U22 roster spot. It's a matter of digesting spend versus potential versus performance versus contribution, along with the restrictions that the U20 rule is. And so I encourage anyone that's wondering, go ahead and do your homework. It's pretty restrictive in terms of the player's earnings versus what you can actually purchase a player for. And so play within the rules. That's one thing we do here in Seattle, and we'll see. But U22 spot we have, and then obviously when you have a roster as deep as ours, I want to keep everyone, but there's a lot of interest in a lot of our players.
Based on that depth, that's kind of the follow-up question.
Yeah.
Is obviously we talked months ago about, the attack, right? Bringing in Ryan Kent and Saze signing. Yep. Is it still attack you'd want to add to, or is it other places?
Well, it certainly frees us up a little bit. One of the things, and I addressed it yesterday, is when you go around the world and you're looking at players that can actually contribute in MLS in attacking phases and in our attack specifically, because I'm not worried about other people's attack. The player, we just heard from another player today in a German Bundesliga team, and they said, no, we're going to loan him to the second Bundesliga. We're not sending him to MLS. So, there's a lot of conversations we're in at a really high level. We're not interested in maybe throwing a dart. We're interested in a proven resume. And so we still possess that ability to get an attacking player. We're not shying away from it. We'll continue to pursue it, but we're also open-minded to, when you start looking a little deeper into the defensive positions, you can get more for your dollar.
All right. That was Craig Wipes, covering a lot of ground there, talking about Tacoma Defiance and the Ryan Kent there at the end. But what I wanted to talk about was what update he gave on the U22 search. I mean, so he reiterated what he's been saying, which is that whatever player that we land on to fill this spot, the idea is not for it to be a developmental spot. It's for we need someone that can contribute, that's going to play, elevate the level of the group, which is a challenge. And he was talking about how it's challenged getting a player like that to come to MLS compared to other leagues. It's a player that's that young with the type of upside to contribute like he's talking about. It's hard to convince those players to come to MLS. LAFC, what they did with David Martinez is a good example of that is very difficult to do. And even David Martinez, for as good as he is and the upside that he's showed, he's not, I don't know how consistent he's been as far as really week in, week out, helping carry the full load for that team. I mean, he's had some incredible moments. He's clearly of this mold. I think he's the most talented. We saw it when the Sounders played LAFC, and he ran down half the damn field through every single Seattle player that was in his path, and he scored a goal. That was one of the sickest goals I've seen in MLS this season, and that was by a 19-year-old. But the trick is you got to find a player of that profile, of that age, and then convince him to come here. So that's what they're trying to do right now. But what I did think was interesting is that he said that they've been involved in a lot of fun conversations. So that means they're on the hunt. And if he's calling it a fun conversation, then I think that means that they at least are thinking that these guys that they are scouting up and talking to, they've talked to guys that they think, all right, if we actually could convince this guy to come here, we think he could contribute. So what I want to do with this is this kind of got me thinking about just the general hit rate of U22s since this mechanism has been introduced to the league. How difficult is it, or not difficult, for teams to find players like this, get them to the league, and have them move the needle, contribute week in, week out? And luckily, MLSsoccer.com has a list of every U22 that I'm about to share right now. So what I wanted to do is look at this list, and I already looked at it a little bit, but with you guys, I wanted to go through this list and see how many of these guys are actual impact players or even look like they can be impact players. You see the picture right here, Diego Luna. That's an example of, he is carrying the load for Real Salt Lake. But I'll tell you guys, I went into this little exercise thinking that the hit rate was going to be extremely low. Because if you think about it, players come into this league from overseas, it's kind of a crapshoot anyway. And then when you take players of this profile who have less and less experience, it would stand to reason that the hit rate would be inherently lower, right? That's how I was thinking of it. But I will say, before we look at these names, on first glimpse at it, I was actually like, okay, there are actually more guys on here that I would have thought that have been good, that have actually meaningfully contributed, and in some cases moved the needle a lot. So let's take a look without further ado. Let's start with Atlanta United. I don't know if this list is like fully up to date of all guys that are on every roster right now, but it's most of the guys that have been signed under this mechanism since it got put in place. So you got Atlanta United with Edwin Mascara, not that good. I would say that that's been a miss for them so far. Austin FC, Duber Sarksky, not good. Barely know who that is. Charlotte FC, you've got Petkovic, Oklamati, who I barely know who those guys are. And then you've got Kerwin Vargas, who's been solid. That's actually a solid one. Chicago Fire, Barroso, who looks okay, not amazing. Gutierrez, that's a little different because he's homegrown for them. So that's another way to do it. Like Seattle could use this on Obed, that's been talked about. But that's not, I was kind of thinking of this as more guys who came from outside the league. That's kind of what I was more interested in because I think that's what Seattle would be looking to do. I don't know who this last guy is. Flores, I think, has been solid for FC Cincinnati. So like just these first few teams, I'm looking at it and I was like, this is sort of what I thought. Like this looks really hard to actually find an impact player. You keep going down the list and you've got Atencio in there for the Rapids now, who he's playing well. I think that was a good get for them, but that's more intra-league, and Cole Bassett's also a homegrown. None of these Rapids guys really fit in the criteria that I was looking at. The Crew don't have any. So that's one approach. Then you're getting into your Leo Chus, Patrickson Delgado, Giovanni Jesus. These last two guys, I don't think that's a very amazing group for FC Dallas. Leo Chu was considered more of a bust than he deserved in Seattle. I maintain that he wasn't like a total bust, but he definitely never hit the upside that the Sounders were hoping when they signed him. And I think the Leo Chu example is kind of shows how difficult it can be. You know, like that was a play. Leo Chu had some pedigree coming from Brazil. He was considered a distressed asset, but like that was one where when they did it, I was like, okay, I can see why they would think that this is a good use of this spot. And he had some good moments. He has 20, 21, 22 goal contributions for his MLS career. So he's not like a total zero, but definitely didn't pop. These DC United guys, not that good. The Dynamo group is a little better. Jack McGlynn's sort of TBD. If that pops the way they hope it's going to pop, that could really work, but I don't think you can say that it has yet. Anali hasn't popped yet. I don't think Aliu has popped yet. Quinones is pretty good, I think, but not a mega hit. So going down the list, like this whole like first part of it was kind of reaffirming my priors, and it was honestly making me feel like, man, I just don't know how likely it really is that Seattle is gonna find someone who's like a real impact player with this spot, which is what Craig Weibs, that's his stated goal. It's not a developmental spot where you give him a year or two. He wants whoever it is to be able to slide in and play right now. So a few of these guys that we've looked at are definitely getting minutes and contributing. Are they like stars though? Are they carry the load players? They're not that many that we've looked at so far. The SKC duo, not super popping. The Galaxy group. Okay, so this Julian Aude guy, he's really good. And they also are the ones that got the crown jewel of this mechanism, which I think is Dejan Joveljic. So Dejan Joveljic is the one that everyone points to of like, oh yeah, see, you can use this mechanism to get a carry the load type striker. That is the outlier though. Like Joveljic is the outlier. I think he's the only striker, at least, that I could think of, which everyone is saying Seattle's got to use this on a striker. Like I said that at one point. Nico has said that. But going through this list, like Joveljic is the only one that I could think of that's like really popped the way that they want him to pop. But then you go down and it starts to get better here. I mean, Davi Martinez was if you can pull something like that, that's what you want to do with these spots, I think, is a player like that who has the combination of pedigree and upside that, I mean, they're going to sell him for an incredible bag. So any player of that mold, it's just, that's an impressive one from LAFC that they pulled that off, because Davi Martinez is like, he was on the radar of like Bayern Munich and clubs like that. And they convinced him. I don't know how they did it. They convinced him to go to LAFC. But again, like I said, if you ask an LAFC fan if he's truly been a needle mover for them, I don't think they would say that he has. He's had some unbelievable individual plays, but as far as his total body of work, I mean, he's 19. So that's like the situation that you get with players like this sometimes. Inter Miami's got a really good group here. Aviles, excellent. Redondo, one of the most highly rated prospects coming out of Argentina when they got him. And Segovia has looked pretty awesome at moments for them so far this year. Although It seems like, I don't know, I was reading on Reddit that some of their fans might not like Segovia and Allende as much as I did when I first watched them play this year. But either way, like this Inter Miami group, but like this is the thing. Inter Miami was able to, and they did it with Diego Gomez too. And Inter Miami has been cooking with this like as much as anybody. But like it makes it a lot easier when you are able to say, hey, come to our club to develop, and you get to play with Lionel Messi and the Barca boys. I think if you look at the success they've had with this mechanism, it's a lot to do with that. Like how they were able to leverage Messi and the Barca boys to get just so many of these elite prospects on their roster. So if you can figure out a way to assemble a group like they have without Messi and the Barca boys, I don't know. When I look at their group, I think it's the best all around work that has been done when you throw in Diego Gomez and a couple of the other guys. This Minnesota United group, not that impressive. CF Montreal, George Campbell, I didn't even know I forgot he was still in the league. that is not a good use of that spot. That's someone who's thought to have upside in like 2021. But what are the real odds George Campbell is going to be a week in, week out impact player? Jalen Neal, I like that move, but it hasn't really worked out for them this year. Nashville, this Qasim guy, Ahmed Qasim, has been playing for them. He looks like he could be good, but it hasn't popped yet. Not sure about these Revs or Red Bulls guys. Noah Ely for the Red Bulls. He's been really good. He's like what CF Montreal would want George Campbell to be, I think. So that's a good example of using it to get a really good defender. NYCFC is another team that is really good at this. I think if I was to look at the clubs that I want Seattle to emulate with their use of this mechanism going forward, Inter Miami, NYCFC, and LAFC are the ones that stand out. And then obviously Jovic. I looked at the list very briefly. So my early take on it was going off just like first gut reaction. But yeah, it's actually, I'm kind of going through it with you guys right now. I'm kind of getting back to feeling like, man, it might be pretty hard. The degree of difficulty you're threading on a signing like this feels pretty high. But like Fernandez, Mijatovic, Ojeda, and there's been a couple others in the last couple years for NYCFC where they actually get these guys and they come in and help carry the load, score goals, move the needle. They've been pretty good at it. Ramiro Enrique Rodriguez for Orlando City. Enrique is pretty good. Quinn Sullivan, homegrown for the Union. Oh, okay. I think so. Here's a lot of them that I think started to look better. The Timbies have done well with this. They have. This is an impressive group. Anthony has been playing pretty lights out for them this year. Ayala's been really good. Santi Moreno, is he still on their team? Yeah, he is. Santi Moreno, I'm not sure if he's having as good a year this year, but he's been a very good signing for them, at least production-wise. And then Kevin Kelsey, he got pocketed by Stu Hawks, but that's a $10 million type player. So the Timbies have done good work with this. That's one of those ones where I look at it and I'm like, okay, like maybe if you play your cards right, you actually can cook with this. Obviously, Diego Luna is one of the highlights of this so far, and he had an interesting path because he came up through USL before he went to RSL. So that's a little of a unique situation, I would say. That's not one where I really look at it and I'm like, okay, Seattle can emulate that. And then you got San Diego FC with Tomas Angel and Bruseth. None for the Quakes, none for the Sounders. And then not really sure about St. Louis and Toronto, but then you get down to the Caps, and the Caps have probably the best pure duo on this list. Ocampo, excellent. Been really good, been contributing to their Champions Cup run. And Pedro Vite is not just the best player on this list. He is a top 3 to 5 player in MLS right now. So that shows that it can be done. I don't know. What do you guys think? After seeing that list and hearing some of those names, are you feeling better or worse? I feel like going through it made me a little less confident, but then you do look at some of the individual names. If you think about Jovic, Ocampo, Vite, the guys that the Timbies have, Anthony, a player like that, it can be done. The degree of difficulty on it is really high for a lot of the variables that we heard Craig Wybes mention, and just the notion of getting week in, week out, big time contributions from players of that age doesn't happen as much. Hit rates lower in those situations. But there were names on that list. That really did pop. I think that's basically a long way of saying that I've come back around to my original take, which is that it is hard. The degree of difficulty is high, but if you play your cards right, you scout it up right, you find the right guy that fits into your system, your culture, and everything, you can cook with this. Let's see what Craig Wybes has got here.